The absolute chaos of the latest Digital Circus episode left us with so many questions, from Scratch and Abstraction to Abel and Kinger. However, even though it wasn't the main focus, we actually got plenty of clues about Jax's past with his two best friends, Ribbit and Kaufmo. We saw his wall of cherished memories, the crystal ball holding a moment close to his heart, and of course, the powerful presence his former companions still hold in his mind, giving him a sense of peace just by remembering them. Today, we're diving into everything we know so far to unravel the bonds between this trio, the massive role they played in Jax's mental stability, and of course, the reason they went their separate ways, which explains why our favorite purple rabbit is now so distant from the rest of the circus cast. It all started when Gooseworks was asked who the last person to abstract before Kaufmo was. Her answer was Ribbit. Shortly after, Gooseworks shared concept art of Ribbit, marking the first time we ever saw his name. However, it wasn't until episode 5 that we were given more context. When Pomni asks if Jax has any friends, Ragatha replies, "Not anymore," which clearly strikes a nerve with the rabbit. This is the first time we see him truly affected by a comment, but it isn't until the mid-episode break that we see Jax staring intently at his old friend's door. This behavior continued in the following episode. After Zubul attacks them brutally and Pomni runs off to chase them, Jax is left alone. It's here that he first looks at Kaufmo's door, appearing annoyed for some reason, whereas when he looks at Ribbit's, he seems to be in a slight state of shock, as if a memory has suddenly resurfaced. However, the moment is fleeting, and he continues with the adventure. It isn't until the most recent episode of the Amazing Digital Circus that we get a deeper look into Jax's friendship with Kaufmo and Ribbit. Here, we see a photo wall in Jax's room, though only one photo is clearly visible. In it, we see a genuinely happy Jax sharing ice cream with Kaufmo and Ribbit. This beautiful moment suggests that the rest of the photographs also capture happy times for the trio, but now that they have both abstracted, he finds himself unable to look at the photos without sinking deeper and deeper into depression. In fact, it is at this very moment that Jax begins to hallucinate, seeing Ribbit's hand reaching out from a hole that appeared in the corner. What's interesting is that, despite the disbelief on his face, Jax doesn't hesitate for a second to reach out toward his friend, entering his own mind. It is exactly when he begins to see his old friends' faces that we see him lower his guard and simply let himself be carried away by the moment. The final reference to Ribbit occurs upon entering Kane's office. Here, all the adventures he has created are visible, encased in spheres like the memory orbs from Inside Out. Pomni looks at the Candy Kingdom adventure, likely remembering Gummy Goo. Gangle looks at the Spudsies adventure, but most importantly, Jax stops to look at a sphere containing an adventure in snowy mountains. If you listen closely, you can hear voices that are somewhat difficult to make out. Up until now, the most popular theory was that this memory was the last happy adventure Jax had with his friends, as it aligns with a photo in his room where they are enjoying some kind of ice cream or treat. However, if we listen carefully, a completely different story emerges.
Hey, you alright?
I'm great.
This changes everything. Instead of being the last happy memory he shared with his best friends, evoking sadness and melancholy, this seems to be the exact moment everything started to fall apart. We hear an argument between Jax and Ribbit, where it seems the rabbit is unable to be honest about his feelings for his friends. Doesn't that sound familiar? The conversation is strikingly similar to the argument Jax and Pomni had in episode 6, where Jax is unable to admit that he's starting to form a genuine bond with Pomni, while she calls out his obvious tough guy facade. That fight ended with Jax indirectly asking her to believe all the lies he told and to stop trying to find something deeper within him. This immature attitude is a staple for Jax. He prefers to hurt someone who genuinely cares about him rather than show vulnerability to anyone. These defense mechanisms may be the result of a traumatic event or situations that left him unable to trust anyone again. It's possible we'll see more about this in the next chapter, finally revealing why each character ended up trapped inside the simulation. But going back to Ribbit, If a situation similar to the fight with Pomni occurred during that snowy adventure, it is more than likely that this was the beginning of the trio's falling out. They drifted further and further apart, until the loneliness and the inherent madness of the digital circus drove Ribbit to Abstraction. But why would Jax say such cruel things to one of his best friends? To answer this, we have to highlight something that has been happening since the start of the series, but that we haven't paid much attention to. The fact that Gangle is always the butt of Jax's jokes. He bullies her, threatens her, and even physically hurts her by constantly breaking her comedy mask. Initially, we might think Jax is just a despicable person who enjoys making Gangle suffer. However, it isn't until Zooble starts getting closer to Gangle and supporting her that we see Jax get truly upset. It's not because he lost his target, it's because Jax genuinely believed that messing with her all the time made them friends in some twisted way. We first see this in episode 5, specifically during the picnic scene under the stars. Jax makes a very telling comment. He pays similar attention to Gangle in the following episodes, but focusing on this moment in particular, Jax's question gives us insight into his mindset. There are many people who believe that showing weakness or vulnerability is a bad thing, making the arbitrary decision to pick on those they deem weaker so that they can become strong. Even if the intentions are somehow good, the action is incredibly damaging to the other person. You can't force anyone to be like you, because not everyone sees the world the same way. This is exactly what happens with Gangle. She doesn't see Jax as someone who cares about her or wants to make her emotionally resilient. She only sees someone who wants to make her suffer for fun. Thanks to Zooble, Gangle is slowly learning to love the parts of herself she used to dislike, but which also make her unique. This is the complete opposite of Jax's mentality, which is why he seems so annoyed every time he sees Gangle happy just because Zooble is there to support her. Furthermore, the only person he considered his friend, again in a twisted way, is slowly drifting away from him because she found someone who makes her truly happy. He finds a small bit of solace in Pomni. After Gangle teams up with Zooble instead of Jax in episode 6, the rabbit is visibly upset. However, when Pomni lets herself get swept up in the madness and eccentricity of the adventure, Jax unknowingly becomes more and more comfortable with her, even confessing his phobias, like his hatred of corn. But inevitably, Jax realizes he let his guard down, leading to the sad moments we already know. But where am I going with all of this? Well, it turns out that everything we've mentioned is likely exactly what happened between Jax and Ribbit. As the saying goes, those who don't learn from their mistakes are doomed to repeat them. It's very possible that their relationship was that of a pair of pranksters who enjoyed Keen's wild adventures almost as much as they enjoyed bothering their circus castmates, having fun every day without thinking too much about where they were or how they got there. Or at least, that's how it seemed on the surface. It wouldn't take long for that closeness to turn into a genuine friendship, which naturally leads to knowing a person beyond their persona, exposing insecurities and personal struggles through trust. However, as we mentioned, Jax eventually realized this and did the only thing he knows how to do: self-sabotage. This brings us back to the argument we heard. We know Jax, so it's possible that a simple comment or joke from Ribbit regarding something private or personal about Jax started the argument. It would have escalated until they said things so hurtful that their great friendship shattered completely. Jax would be too proud to try to make amends, while Ribbit would feel betrayed. Even Kaufmo, the most overlooked member of the trio, would have noticed Jax's cruelty and focused on comforting Ribbit. This would have annoyed the rabbit greatly, which explains the resentment toward Kaufmo we see when he looks at his door in episode 5. It's highly likely that Ribbit's pain over the situation escalated until her attitude became hostile toward everyone, including Kaufmo, who was only trying to help. As Jax himself mentions, people don't exactly act their best right before they abstract. Now, diehard Jax fans might think it's possible that Ribbit started the argument, since the voices in episode 7's Sphere aren't 100% clear. That's fair. However, we must remember that the creator of the digital circus, Gooseworks, doesn't hold Jax in high regard, having called him a pathetic loser with no friends on more than one occasion. She also mentioned that the worst thing Jax has done is yet to be seen. This might not be a future event, but rather the revelation of this past memory that constantly eats away at him. Despite what he shows, the rabbit is quite reflective regarding his bad actions. We saw this when he wondered if Gangle could actually be happy, and again after his argument with Pomni in episode 6, despite trying to maintain his facade, he couldn't stop thinking about what happened, eventually leading to the memorable scene in the bathroom where he has an anxiety attack. This repeats in the latest episode, but the most noteworthy part is that it begins after Zubal's beautiful speech to Gangle about her feelings. This is where we see the rabbit start to hyperventilate. It's possible he's remembering what happened with Ribbit after seeing the sphere containing that final tragic adventure, realizing that despite everything, Gangle actually managed to find happiness. He realizes his actions weren't the best, but as we know, he's too proud to say it out loud. An interesting detail I omitted but is worth noting is the theory that Pomni is very similar to Ribbit, at least in her personality and the way she had fun with Jax in episode 5. It's also curious that Gooseworks revealed Pomni's original design was intended to be a toad or a frog, just like Ribbit. This resemblance might have led Jax to feel more comfortable with Pomni, which in turn revived those tragic memories of his old friend Ribbit. Sadly, he seems to be making the same mistake again. Fortunately, thanks to the rest of the circus crew, Pomni was able to see past Jax's lies, and thanks to her emotional stability, she might even continue trying to lend the rabbit a hand. Having seen all this, there is still one small loose end. In this trio of friends, there is obviously one left that many fans, myself included, don't always give enough importance to: Kaufmo. He was the first abstracted character we, as viewers, saw in the series. Given everything mentioned, it's clear Kaufmo didn't have a great time before his abstraction either. Seeing his two best friends drift further and further apart must have been depressing for him. Kaufmo likely tried to keep everyone's spirits up with bad jokes and by pretending nothing was wrong, but it wasn't until Ribbit abstracted that everything started to fall apart for the clown as well. That event made the rest of the circus cast even sadder, like Ragatha, who could hardly laugh at his jokes out of pity, something Kaufmo immediately noticed. This tragic loss might have driven Kaufmo to search for an exit to help his friends escape and avoid Ribbit's sad fate. However, as we know, he was the one who ended up paying the price. His obsession inevitably condemned him to become just another abstraction, unable to help his companions, especially his old friend and adventure partner, Jax.